Hi everyone, welcome back to Masechet Pesachim, Tractate Pesachim. We were talking about last time the different proofs against two different rabbis in the Gemara. One of them said that when we say in the Mishnah, if you remember from last time, the Mishnah said, Ola Abasa, the light of the 14th. The light of the 14th is very ambiguous. It could be either the night or the day. So we have an argument between two rabbis. Rav Huna says light, or means day. Rav Yehuda says all means night. That was the argument. And so we went through many different proofs and disproofs on which one of these opinions is right. The only one we accepted so far is the one that Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says that all light means nighttime, which means that the night of the 14th, the night before the night of the Seder, we check for chametz. So that's the only one we proved right so far, and that was from a Mishnah. So now we're going to do a little bit of a review, and then we're going to keep going in the Gemara to see the different disproofs and proofs of Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Huna, whether light actually means day or light means nighttime. So then we can really see what the Mishnah was talking about and when we're supposed to check for chametz according to the Mishnah. So let's see what the Gemara says. We're in Daf Bet Amud Bet. I'd say 10, 15 lines down. The word that starts the line is lishkache, and the second word on the line is metve. That's where we're going to be starting. Metve, the seventh mitve. Metve. So now we have a contradiction or a proof against one of the opinions. So it says in Tehillim, I thought that darkness, let's read Rashi. Rashi always helps with Tehillim, because this specific verse is a little confusing for me. Choshech yishufani. So Rashi is saying in the name of David HaMelech is saying about himself, I thought in my poor state, kshayiti nildaf, that when I was being chased, bechoshech ze amut, that I will be in this darkness, I will pass away, I will die. V'hu yishufani, v'hu yachshich tamid alai, shor neshef v'layla, v'choshech, kshayiti sharui bo nase or ba'adani, etzli. So what happened when David was being chased for his life? He thought that he was going to die, but when he was saved, the darkness became light. Right? Let's read the words of the pasuk. V'layla or ba'adani. The nighttime became like light for me. Al-ma'o yemamahu. So if the nighttime becomes like light, so what's the opposite of nighttime? It should be daytime. So we must see that from the word light that's used in this verse, it must be that light actually means daytime. No, this is what David was actually saying. David. I thought that my olam haba would be dark because olam haba is actually light. It's like daytime. But really no. What I realize is that this world, which is like nighttime, is now actually daytime because you saved my life. So that was the seventh proof. And we can't prove that light actually means daytime because it was disproved by this explanation of David's opinion. We're on the eighth metvei. Metvei Rabbi Yehuda omer botkin ola aba'asar va'uba'asar shachrit u'b'sha'ot habi'ur. So now we have a verse from a Mishnah that says, I think it's in this Masechet, but yes, in this Masechet, it says in this Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says we check on the 14th, ola aba'asar, the light of the 14th, and in the 14th in the morning, and during the time of the burning. So we see this juxtaposition between the light of the 14th and in the morning of the 14th. So if you put those together, they can't mean the same thing. They must be two different things. So what that means, the fact that they put them together in the Mishnah, so this is the first time we see, actually I think this is the first case we see that it's actually proven, Shema Mina, we actually see that it's proven correct, and Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is accepted. Rabbi Yehuda, if you remember, is the opinion that says light, or is considered nighttime. So according to this Mishnah that we just quoted, it must be that all light means nighttime, and we check we check the night of the 14th, the night before the Seder. As in there's Seder night, let's say Seder night is on Monday night, Orla Abasa would be Sunday night. Okay, we're on the ninth metvei. in the middle of the page. Last word on the line. So now we have a question. We're going to quote a Tosefta. There's a question. It's asked, when is it asur? When is it prohibited to do melacha? On the 14th. So on the 14th of Nisan, we know it's prohibited to do a melacha, which is work. We're not supposed to work on the 14th, which is the day of Erev Pesach. And so when does that happen? Me'emata, when? So the answer is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Misha'at ha'or, from the time of the light. So he doesn't say daytime or nighttime, he says light. Rabbi Yehuda omer Bishat hanetzachama. Rabbi Yehuda says from the time netzachama. Netzachama is when you can start to see the sun on the horizon, which is in the morning. So Rabbi Eliezer says when the light comes out, or light, from the time of light. Rabbi Yehuda says when the sun starts to come out of the horizon. It's called netzachama. It's a halachic time of day. Netzachama is when the first layer of the sun, when you can first see the sun pop up from the horizon. Not when the sky becomes bright, not daytime, but when the sun first comes out of the horizon. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says to Rabbi Yehuda, so through this Tosefta, we still have a continuation of the Tosefta. We're not going to stop here, the Gemara says, but we're going to continue and see what the Tosefta says. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov asks Rabbi Yehuda, how can you tell me that Netzachama is the time when Melacha is stopping? Netzachama is during the daytime. So how can you say as in it's not the beginning of daytime, it's during the daytime? How can you say that before Netzachama it's not asur, it's not prohibited to do work, and after Netzachama it is prohibited to do work? How can you split up the day like that and have just part of a day that's prohibited? So he asked, so where did we find that part of a day is prohibited and the other part is not prohibited? So where do we see? So Rabbi Yehuda says, I can show you from a certain halacha in Pesach about the 14th of Nisan that can show you that part of it will be asur and part of it will be mutar. So that, what is Rabbi Yehuda's answer? When is it part of the day it's mutar, but part of the day it's asur? Part of the day it's allowed, it's permitted, but part of the day it's prohibited. When we're eating chametz, we're not allowed to eat chametz after a certain time during the day of the 14th. But before a certain time of the day of the 14th, we are allowed. I think it's during the daytime in the morning. I think it should be chatzot, but I don't want to say anything that I haven't read yet. So there's a certain time where it splits where you are allowed to eat chametz and where you're not allowed to eat chametz, which means that there's part of a day where it's prohibited, part of a day where it's not prohibited. So that can prove that we can still use that for the time of work, when is work prohibited. So now so that was the end of the Tosefta, that was the end of the quote. So now we're going back to our Masechet Pesachim and we're going to see how this word all goes into play. If we see what Rabbi Yehuda said from the time of the sun coming up from the horizon, next to the opinion Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov who says from the time of the light, it must mean that light means nighttime. So now we're going in. So this is not this Rabbi Yehuda, but the Rabbi Yehuda in our Gemara, in the beginning of the Gemara, right after Mishnah Masechet Pesachim, he says that all means nighttime. And so according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion, if we remember, his opinion is that it's from the time of the light, Mishat ha'ol, from the light. So according to that light actually means nighttime. So now the Gemara says, no, it's not true. My ol. What is this ol that we're actually talking about? What is the ol that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said is the time where you're not allowed to do melacha? Hu amud hashacha. Am I in the right place? Lost my place. My ol amud hashacha. So amud hashacha is actually the time that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is holding. That's the actual time where work is prohibited. What is amud hashacha? Amud hashacha is when the sky or the world seems to look a little brighter. You can't see the sun yet, but it is daytime. So it's right before the sun comes up from the horizon, but there is still considered daytime. So that's the beginning of the day. Ihachi. So now we're going to go off of this answer that we just gave about all, this refutation of the first all. We first thought maybe ol means nighttime because of the way it's put next to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion of netzach hama. But we said no, that's not true. This ol, this light, actually means daytime, but not daytime. It means amud hashachar, it means the beginning of the day, before the sun comes up from the horizon. But if we say that it's actually before the sun comes up from the horizon, so if we look back at the Tosefta that we just read, in there, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov asks Rabbi Yehuda, how can you have part of a day that's mutar and part of a day that's asur? Didn't Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov do the same thing if you tell me that his point of demarcation of daytime is amud hashachar? Because now you have part of the day that's mutar and part of the day that's asur. This is assuming, of course, that nighttime is the start of each day. And so the nighttime is the beginning of the day. And so how can you tell me, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that during the nighttime it's okay to do melacha, but during the daytime, after amud hashachar, it's not allowed? It seems like you're splitting up the 14th of Nisan in part mutar and part asur. And if you're going to do that, then how can you ask Rabbi Yehuda the question that you asked? He has to ask himself. He has to ask himself the same question. That's what the Gemara is telling us. So no, we're going to figure this out, and we're going to see why Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is allowed to ask that question. So what is this nighttime that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying is allowed to do melacha? So no, the Gemara is going to explain what is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov really saying. It's okay, in my opinion, why why is it okay? Because we see that the Rabbanan maybe could have an argument about nighttime and daytime, right? The daytime starts at Amud HaShachar, the nighttime goes until Amud HaShachar, so there's a very set or clear split between daytime and nighttime, and that's Amud HaShachar. So now you can see how in Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion, that is what daytime and nighttime is, and so there's no problem of having part mutar and part asur, because one is nighttime, one is daytime. Why? How do we know that? Because we can get it from Tanit Tzibur. When we do Ta'niyot, Ad matai ochel v'shoteh, when are you allowed to eat or drink? Ad she'eleh amud hashachar, until the amud hashachar, until the time where the day becomes bright, or it's daytime outside. Div Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Shimon says, Ad kot hagever, until the rooster crows. That's Rabbi Shimon's opinion on when, for Ta'anit, when you're supposed to stop eating and drinking. But if we look at this quote that we just gave, we can see Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion that it's okay for the nighttime to be mutal and the daytime to be asur. As you can see, there's an amud hashachar. You have amud hashachar, the time where the sky becomes bright, and that can be the time when you can have the chametz, or the melacha, be asur after that time. But now Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is going to ask Rabbi Yehuda, Ela ledidach, Rabbi Yehuda, you're the one who says netzach hama. That's not amud hashachar. Where do you get this idea that you can have before netzach hama, and then after netzach hama have two different statuses? How can you have the daytime, which is after amud hashachar, before netzach hama? How can you have that mutar, but after netzach hama asur? How can you have that, Rabbi Yehuda? It seems like you're splitting up the daytime itself. The rabbis can't argue about that. The sages. Amalei, so now Rabbi Yehuda can answer him, Hu atzmo yochiach, itself, the 14th of Nisan can itself prove that you can have part of the day mutal and part of the day asur, like we said before, because before a certain time you're allowed to eat chametz, and after a certain time you're prohibited from eating chametz. So we can see from this that Rabbi Yehuda can answer Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and now everyone is happy for now. Right? The world is happy. But let's see where we can go further with this and how Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov can answer Rabbi Yehuda. So Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda's answer when he said about how it's partly asur to eat chametz and partly mutar to eat chametz, it's a very good answer, Shapir. It's very good. But now, what can Rabbi Eliezer answer to Rabbi Yehuda now? Amina lacha, ana melacha derabanan, va'at amarti chametz doraita. Rabbi Eliezer can now ask Rabbi Yehuda, even though he answered well, Rabbi Eliezer can answer Rabbi Yehuda with a question. You're telling me, let me rephrase the question. I'm asking you about ideas of Rabbanan, as in these are takanot that are established by the sages, the hours of when you stop doing work. And you're answering me with laws from the Torah that are not from the sages, that are from the Torah itself about eating chametz. You can't do that. Rashi actually comments on this. So if you answer a deoraita to a question of derabanan, it doesn't match up. It's two different statuses, two different levels of halacha. So how can Rabbi Yehuda answer with a deoraita, which is chametz? So Rabbi Yehuda can now answer Rabbi Eliezer and say, oh, we're not there yet. First we have to finish the question. So Rabbi Eliezer can say, of course, we know that in derabanan, we have set clear demarcations of when is asur, when is mutar, based on the sage's opinion. But when Rabbi Yehuda brings up the Torah about chametz, in the Torah it's not as clear and concise and set and demarcated as the sages. So now Rabbi Yehuda will answer Rabbi Eliezer and say v'idach, but you sha'od derabanan. So Rabbi Yehuda, as in v'idach, and you Rabbi Yehuda will answer sha'od derabanan. No, what is the idea of chametz that I'm bringing? It's not the prohibition of chametz on the 14th, because that is from the Torah. What am I actually talking about? I'm talking about the hours of when you're not allowed to eat chametz. And the hours, the set time of day that you're not allowed to eat chametz is set by the sages. It's not from the Torah. V'idach, and so now Rabbi Eliezer can answer him. Hachakahu da'avu rabban ledoraita. The halchaka. So we have a concept in halacha that it's called halchaka, where we make darim, we make helpful fences around certain ideas or prohibitions in the Torah, and we make it a little bit more strict so that we can make sure that we don't come to do those prohibitions. So for example, the Rabbanan would have said that, maybe going against Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, that chametz is asur the entire day of the 14th, and not just half. So it's okay, we understand now Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that half of this day maybe is mutar and half of it is asur for chametz. But in reality, when the Rabbanan make a decree, it's not half and half, it's usually the entire day. And that's what Rabbi Eliezer can answer Rabbi Yehuda. And so that's the end of the discussion here in the Gemara. But we see at the end, the conclusion is, or we're not at the conclusion of the page yet, but the conclusion of this meitve, which is number 9, we see that we can't use ol, like we were looking for the entire time. We were trying to find is the word ol, when it says light, ol la'abasal, does it mean daytime or nighttime? And first we said daytime, but now we really see we can't prove either way. So we're going to go to the 10th meitve. We're 4 lines from the bottom. En mesi'in masot ela ala chodesh shnira bizmano lekacho. We're not, so in the times of the Gemara, I'm going to go to Rashi. En mesi'in masot. We don't carry, I'm not sure what the literal translation is. What it really is when they used to light fires on different mountains to make sure that people know when the new Rosh Chodesh would be. We didn't have a calendar back then, and so the way we knew when Rosh Chodesh was when there was fires lit on certain mountaintops, and that was done when? On the 30th of every month. Avukot, there were bonfires, b'rashei harim, on the tops of the mountains. Amin Rashi en mesi'in masaot. Hayu shluchei bet din. People from the bet din osin lohadia shehayom kichu bet din et hachodesh. When the bet din would decide when the chodesh, Rosh Chodesh was, the start of the month would be, they would light a fire. And they would only do that Ela ala chodesh shnira bezman lo kacho. I'm still in Rashi. Biyom 30 shnira lekadesh. Di'ilu כשהחודש מעובר ועושים ראש חודש ביום 31 אין מקדשים אותו שכבר קידשוהו שמיים. והשמינה היי אנא דאחסר. I'm going to translate in 1 second. עבדינן מסעות ומלא לא עבדינן מסעות וכשאין רואים מסעות יודעים שהחודש מעובר. And so what they would do, they would light the fires every 30th. The 30th of the month, that's when they would light the fire. Let's say the month had 31 days. When they would look to the mountain and they would see no fires, they would understand that the month is actually 31 days. And they would retroactively count and say, oh, this is not the first day, it's actually the 31st. And so that's Rosh Chodesh. And so let's see what the pasuk says. And so when do we do this? When do we do this process of lighting the bonfires? It says the light of the ibur, the light of the extra day. Iburo literally means the light of the pregnant, but iburo means the light of the 31st day. What is the light? So what does that mean? Alma or urtahu. It must mean that the light, because we light it during the nighttime, and that's when you would see the bonfires, the light of the 31st day is, let's say the 31st of the month is on Sunday, and the 30th is on Shabbat. The light of the 31st is Saturday night, Motzei Shabbat. That's the light. That's at nighttime, so it must be nighttime. Or utahu, so it must mean that the light that they're talking about when we're lighting Rosh Chodesh fires for each mountain from the Bet Din for Rosh Chodesh, it must mean that that light is actually talking about nighttime. It must mean nighttime. And if it means nighttime, that the light that we say in the Mishnah, Or La'abasal, also means nighttime. Shma Mina. So now we have our second proof for light meaning nighttime. It must mean night. So now we have the eighth one and the 10th are according to Rabbi Yehuda. If you remember, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says that nighttime is what it means when it says oh. Okay, let's do two more. Meitzveh. So we have another disproof against Haya Omed Kol Laila Umakib al Mizbeach Le'ora. So it says in the Bet Mikdash he would he would stand all day and give korbanot. In the Bet Mikdash they used to have a lot of korbanot, and they would have processes overnight as well. And so when he would stay overnight and he would give his korban, it says in the Mishnah, or I think it's the Mishnah, in Masechet Pesachim, it says le'ora. It says to its light. Ta'un kiddush yadayim v'reglayim divrei Rebbe. So Rebbe says that he needs to wash his hands and his feet again after a certain time has passed if he stayed up all night. Ora, shiny. So we want to say from this, when it says ora, we want to say maybe ora is actually talking about the daytime because he stayed up until the korban of the daytime. But actually, no, ora is different. Why is ora different? Because the way it's said, it's not ol, it says ora. So ora actually does mean daytime. But in this case, ol is not the word we're using. So we can't say that ol means daytime. Okay, we're going to end here with the last line. We'll continue next time with Marzutra at the bottom of Daf Bet Amud Bet. Thank you for joining. All the best.